Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Career Choice Series webinar on immigration law, defense, and advocacy. The Career Choice Series is designed to help you choose your career path. Whether you're a law student, young lawyer, or transitioning attorney, find out what it's like to work in various practice areas and the best way to position yourself to get there. The Career Choice Series is brought to you today by ABA Legal Career Central, Law Student Division, Young Lawyers Division, and the Commission on Immigration. The Commission on Immigration directs the ABA's efforts to ensure fair treatment and full due process rights for immigrants and refugees within the U.S. The Commission is part of the ABA Division for Public Services and ABA Department of Public Interest Committees, dedicated to applying the knowledge and experience of the legal profession to promote the public good. The Young Lawyers Division is here to help new lawyers navigate the early years of their career and law students prepare for life after law school. The Law Student Division offers premium benefits, which includes a savings of $250 on Barbary Bar Review, $25 off West academic casebooks, and a legal ethics bundle that includes a free Model Rules of Professional Conduct ebook. Upgrade to premium for $25. Sign up today at abaforlawstudents.com/go premium. ABA Legal Career Central is a career center that offers both career development resources and a job board for law students, lawyers, and other legal professionals across all disciplines and career stages. Today's moderator is Liz Stone, Managing Director of the Dubin Group, a legal search firm based in the Bay Area. She is a former litigator and currently performs stand-up comedy at clubs throughout the country. She is a board member of ABA Legal Career Central. Liz, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Emily. I am excited to introduce our speakers for today. We are very excited to have Holly Cooper here. Holly is the co-director of the Immigration Law Clinic at UC Davis School of Law, and Holly has extensive litigation experience defending the rights of immigrants and is a nationally recognized expert on immigration detention issues and on the immigration consequences of criminal convictions. I'm also excited to introduce Nicholás, Espíritu, who is a staff attorney at the National Immigration Law Center in Los Angeles. Nico focuses on promoting the rights of low-income immigrants through litigation and administrative advocacy. Currently, he is litigating cases challenging President Trump's travel bans targeting individuals from predominantly Muslim countries and state anti-immigration ordinances, and discrimination against recipients of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Welcome, Holly and Nico. We are so happy to have you here today and learn more about your practice. I'd like to start by hearing about an overview of your practice, a brief description of what your work entails. And Holly, I'd like to start with you. Could you tell us a bit about your work?
So currently I'm a clinical law professor, which I teach at a law school where I direct a clinic where students, we have about 20 students that take on cases to represent detained immigrants at all levels of their cases. And so currently right now we also work on policy issues and issues of impact facing both children who are in immigration detention as well as adults.
Thank you. And Nico, could you give us an overview of your practice?
Yeah, thank you. The majority of my practice involves federal civil litigation that seeks to enforce the rights of immigrants, particularly low-income immigrants in this country. And this involves generally lawsuits brought on behalf of plaintiffs or classes challenging practices by state, local, and federal actors that seek to undermine those rights. So it does kind of look a lot like what people think of kind of traditional civil rights or traditional impact litigation, but with a focus on immigrant communities.
Great, thank you. We have a lot of young lawyers and law students attending this webinar, and they are going to be interested in finding out how they can get into this practice area. Can we hear about your career path? Nico, I'd like to start with you. How did you end up doing the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the foundational things for me was even prior to law school, I was working with undocumented students in my community who were having difficulty accessing college and furthering their education. And so this really motivated me to seek avenues to protect the rights of vulnerable individuals and headed me to law school in the first place. And as folks on the phone are probably keenly aware, sometimes law school can be an alienating place, but one of the things that I found really valuable was finding avenues to be able to serve affected communities even while I was there. And so I participated in a clinic helping VAWA self-petitioners seek to be able to get VAWA status and be able to kind of fully extricate themselves from the abusive situation that they were in. And this gave me a further grounding both in immigration law, what it means to work with immigrant communities, and begun my connections with the Los Angeles, in this case, public interest community.
Great.
And, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. And Holly, can you tell us about your career path and how you ended up doing the work that you're doing now?
Sure. Well, similar to Nico, I knew this is what I wanted to do while I was in law school. But I also took on a tremendous amount of law school debt. So my plan was to work for a big corporate firm for 2 years, have an exit plan, and then go into immigration law. And so I worked at a big corporate law firm making about $120K a year. This was 20 years ago. And, you know, I was in it for about a year. And one morning I woke up, I was there at 5 a.m. I saw the sun rising over the Lake Merritt in Oakland. And I said to myself, what am I doing? Bob Marley song was sort of playing, and I said, I need to get out now. So I got out, and I took a $100,000 pay cut, and I took a job on the border making $20,000 a year at the time, and lived in absolute poverty. But they were literally the best years of my life. And there I represented both immigrant children and adults in detention who were caught on the U.S.-Mexican border in Arizona. And I really found that there was much more value in fighting for human freedom than in whatever monetary rewards I would have gotten in big law. And after about 6 or 7 years of working on the border, I took a job as a clinical professor at UC Davis School of Law, where I've been teaching ever since.
Wow, that's great. Yes, I'm well familiar with those sunrises in the office, and it's great to hear that when you took the pay cut, it was worth it. Let's talk about your current practice. Holly, I'd like to start with you. Can you tell us about a day in your life and the work that you're doing?
Sure. I mean, the great thing about my job is that there is no typical day in a life. So I kind of thought about this question, and I sort of gave you an overview of a week in my life. And so in a typical week, I will do at least one rights presentation inside of a immigration detention facility. I do at least 2 community presentations per week, letting the community know their rights. We also do a lot of coalition building with other nonprofits trying to effectuate policy changes on a more systemic level. I also teach 1 2-hour seminar per week. We also go to court with the students, and just in this last week, we've been in criminal court, juvenile criminal court, as well as the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Federal District Court. We have client meetings at least 2 to 3 times a week, whether in the detention center or in our office if our clients have been released. Just this past week, we went to the city council meeting to support a family member whose son was shot by the police, unfortunately, in Sacramento. We went there as a solidarity measure with the immigrant family. We also went to the May Day protest this week. May Day is also a traditional immigrant rights sort of perspective. A lot of our laborers are immigrants, so there's a lot of coalition and solidarity to go to the May Day protests in Sacramento, where there were about 3,000 attendees from all over the state. We also did fundraising for some of our for what's called a Freedom School, where there will be school districts supporting education for immigrants and communities of color. And we also do public defender consults. So we have done a public defender training this past week, as well as multiple consultations with defense lawyers about the impacts the criminal charges could have on someone's immigration status. So that's a typical week for me. And I don't know about you, Nico.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the
Nico, tell us.
Yeah, so my week often looks very much kind of like a big firm civil litigation lawyer would look. Because our cases now are often, multiple years in the development and litigation and appeals. My docket often looks very much like receiving discovery, responding to discovery, doing meet and confer letters with opposing counsel, moving forward, to summary judgment, kind of a nuts and bolts of civil litigation, with one real exception, which is that I feel deeply, deeply committed to the underlying issue and deeply committed to the outcomes for my clients. And so it is really worthwhile, and I find it sustaining through kind of this long litigation process. But at the same time, we're doing this, we also have the opportunity to engage with the community through through training on immigration issues. Like, I've gotten the opportunity to speak with educational institutions and teachers associations about what they can do to help protect their immigrant students at a time when all immigrant communities feel under attack. I also get a chance to work on some incredibly rich and compelling issues. I've gotten the opportunity recently to work to fight back against President Trump's travel ban, and in the past I've had the opportunity to litigate on behalf of DACA recipients who are looking to protect their rights. So I feel that just the importance to the communities that I care about of the cases that we're litigating really helps to sustain me through kind of what is often kind of a very long litigation process.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to talk to you guys a bit about the pros and cons of your job. Every job has some pros and cons. Nico, I'll start with you. What are some of the highlights of your work, and what are some of the challenges that you face?
I think the highlights of my work are really getting the opportunity to work with really engaged advocates, both legal advocates, community advocates, educators, other labor unions, other groups who are looking to push forward policies that will benefit immigrant communities and the community as a whole. And so that's really the parts, working towards a greater goal are the things that I find very, very rewarding about my work, and that really sustain me in my work.
Great. And what are some of the challenges that you face?
One of the biggest challenges, I mean, I would highlight two challenges. One, of course, is the current political climate that we're in which courts and policymakers at the federal level may be very hostile to the interests of the communities that we're trying to serve. But I think another issue that often is a challenge is the fact that our clients are very vulnerable, and making sure to keep a balance between hoping that we achieve really good policy goals and ensuring that our clients are protected, and that their interests in terms of their day-to-day lives are still being addressed and not being put into jeopardy by their participation in our litigation is another big challenge that we're encountering.
Thank you. Holly, can you talk to us about the pros and cons of your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I love most about my job is just learning people's stories, because I am at heart a trial lawyer, and so you have to understand both people's migration histories as well as the histories of the countries from which they're coming. And I think it's sort of like everybody who is a lawyer sort of at one point wanted to be a writer, and it really allows you to sort of almost like write a persuasive biography about your clients' lives, and it's never uninteresting. It's super interesting, as well as I really love history, and I get to know all the different politics and cultural histories of different countries from around the world. And one of the really great things about being an immigration lawyer is there's so much solidarity and cooperation among lawyers. It's almost like every time I go to a conference, it's like a family reunion. Some of the things I don't like about the field I'm in is seeing people in detention. And you get to witness firsthand human deterioration and the effects of prolonged detention, immigration detention, both on children as well as adults. A lot of times your clients can become suicidal. They can literally be put into solitary confinement, and you can watch just sort of the mental decompensation happen. And it's so once you leave the detention center and you walk outside, then you're expected to sort of navigate this alternate universe where everyone's free, and sort of trying to navigate between those two worlds of witnessing such dire human misery on one hand, and then expected to walk out, you know, and raise my children in a normative environment is a struggle that I think most immigration lawyers have, is how do we navigate this bipolar world we're living in.
Wow, it sounds very personally gratifying, but also, yeah, that sounds like a pretty big challenge for sure. So moving on, Holly, can you tell us what you view the top 3 skills that someone would need to do your job?
Yeah, I think that you really have to enjoy working with people and defending people and understanding that not all people are perfect, but being willing to advocate for individuals and understanding what made them who they are. And I think you really have to, you know, be able to get along with people and be able to be a good listener. I think also you have to be incredibly smart. Immigration law is a 10 out of 10 on level of complexity. And if you can't, you know, take the time to research and understand immigration law, you're doing a huge disservice to our community. And I think that the biggest skill as a personality trait is that you really have to have humor. I know the most successful lawyers I know all have really, really great senses of humor because it's sort of a coping mechanism, and the darker the humor, probably the better.
Nico, what are the top 3 skills that you would identify for someone to succeed in your career?
Well, I think that Holly is absolutely right in the 3 skills she identified. And I think maybe the only thing that I would add to it is that at least for the type of practice that I do, it's not just the real deep understanding of the real true complexities of immigration law and the ins and outs to understand what relief might be available for your client, but also because, at least in my practice, I work at the intersection of immigration law and federal civil practice. The kind of nuts and bolts skill set of being a good lawyer that can put together the best case for your client over kind of this long, protracted period of time, and knowing how to the ins and outs of the discovery process and motion practice that good civil lawyers need. And so having both of those skill sets, I think, are essential. But I agree 100% about the need for humor to get through the day sometimes.
Yeah, understandable. Nico, what would people be surprised to know about your practice?
I think that people would be, I think one of the things, and it might even go counter to what I've said before, was in discussing vulnerable communities. But I think the thing that would surprise people is the real sophistication and organization of immigrant rights communities and their ability to be good advocates on their own behalf and push forward good policy agendas. I think that too often we think of lawyers as being the individuals leading kind of civil rights campaigns, but we have amazing immigrant activists who are directly from the affected communities who are much better advocates in many forms than we could ever be. And so I think that individuals might be coming into practice with assumptions about what the role of a lawyer should be would be surprised to know that sometimes that they need to take a step back and allow those communities to step forward and be the prime advocates in many situations.
Great, thank you. Holly, what would people be surprised to know about your work?
I think people are always surprised to understand the multiple forums in which we advocate, and I agree with Nico that the communities are usually their own best advocates. But, you know, just for example, over the last year, we've advocated for our clients to overturn old convictions in criminal court. We've been in immigration court, just doing sort of the basics of deportation defense and bond hearings. We also have, you know, filed, you know, 3 habeas petitions in federal district court, both in like the Muslim, you know, travel ban litigation, as well as for habeas for people who are wrongfully or, you know, held, and both for a child and adults who are wrongfully held in immigration detention. We also do a lot of work in the circuit court. The bulk of the Ninth Circuit's casework is immigration related. If you want to do circuit appellate law, this is the area of law for you. And, you know, we get, you know, most lawyers would die for the chance to do oral argument. And for an immigration lawyer, oral arguments in the circuit court are you know, at least, you could have them as many as 1 a month to, you know, 1 a year at a minimum. We also advocate in the California Supreme Court in cases. We write amicus briefs. We litigate in the Supreme Court. We also do policy work before the state assembly, as well as the local level, at city council level. There's a lot of city council resolutions and sanctuary work that's being done in the state of California and nationally. So it's really just, there's so many different forums in which you advocate. And so I think it's really interesting and dynamic area of law that's never dull.
Great. And a final question for you guys before we turn to some audience questions. Holly, how has ABA involvement boosted your career?
You know, I've been involved in the Immigration Commission, the ABA, for 5 years. I'm also a section representative for both. I'm an immigration sort of law representative for the criminal justice section as well. And I think I wouldn't say it's boosted my career, but it's boosted my ability to advocate for people, because the ABA has such, you know, a huge prestigious name that when I'm able to write an amicus brief on behalf of the ABA saying this is the policy, this is the aspirational goal of what we want. This year we were able to pass resolutions that favored immigrants' rights, expanded citizenship rights, as well as expanded the rights of detainees. And so when immigrants' rights are boosted and people who are in detention's rights become more robust through the ABA, then that boosts my career in my mind.
Great. And Nico, how about you? How has being involved in the ABA helped your career?
I think that my involvement in the ABA Commission has been tremendously helpful, because it has allowed me to develop both deeper connections with various members of the immigration bar. As Holly mentioned, immigration practitioners practice in a variety of different venues, in a number of different settings. As she mentioned, there are organizations including Pro Bar in Texas that's part of the ABA, that I've had the opportunity to see how those attorneys practice, conditions in which they're dealing with, what their clients' lives are like, and that's just one example of the many different varieties of immigration practice that I haven't had the opportunity to participate in directly, but that my knowledge of how to be a good advocate for immigrant communities is being expanded through these connections and this growing knowledge.
Great. Now we've got a few questions from the audience that I'd like to turn to. First of all, in terms of law students who are looking to get into immigration law, Nico, what kinds of internships would you recommend? Should people be looking for specifically law firms that offer internships, or are there other types of internships or programs that would be helpful for students looking to get into this area?
Well, there are definitely good immigration firms out there that can provide a variety of experience, whether it's issues of immigration law that we haven't touched, like maybe business side immigration law, but also ones that work on family issues or on work with individuals in detention as well. And that's one good avenue. There's also good public interest organizations that focus on immigrants' rights issues that individuals may think of interning with in the summer. I know other individuals who have decided to intern with immigration courts to get experience with how the practice works. But I think that there's probably, as I think we've alluded to, a number of intersections between immigration law, labor law, and various other types of law that individuals can get experience in immigration law. But I do think that there is both firm side and public interest side opportunities to be able to get a better understanding of what it takes to be a good immigration law practitioner.
Thank you. And Holly, if you have any advice on internships to add to Nico, we'd love to hear about that. And also, Holly, if there are any classes that you recommend students take if they're interested in getting into this area.
I think that organizations, if you're looking to apply for an internship, I would ask what type of work you're going to be doing, because the last thing you want to be doing is writing memoranda, for a clerkship. For me, the most meaningful experience you have is being in the field, talking to people, and providing analysis and intake of their legal remedies under the supervision of a lawyer. That's what I did in detention. I'd meet with like 40 to 50 people per day, and that's how I learned the law, and that's how I learned to become an effective advocate. You will not learn the law by sitting in a sterile office without any interaction with the community. So make sure that you're asking questions about what kind of quality experience you'd have. In terms of what classes you could take my class. No, take the clinic. I would also take immigration law. I would take trial advocacy, and I would take criminal procedure.
Great, very helpful. Thank you. I've had a number of questions come in about the current administration. Obviously, big changes now versus the previous administration. Nico, is there anything that you could identify specific to the new administration that is more important in your practice now, or more important for people to do to help fight the current laws and general xenophobia and racism that we're seeing?
Yeah, one of the things that's really increased in our practice, in addition to the need to bring additional lawsuits, is ensuring that the community and other advocates have the necessary information to become good advocates for themselves. So, for example, we have worked to draft model sanctuary school resolutions that can be adopted by school districts, by colleges and other higher education institutions that can and provide the analysis that those institutions need so that they know what policies they can put in place to protect their students. And so a real emphasis for us has been on creating the tools and resources for other advocates to go and be able to successfully advocate for themselves. So that's been a real challenge and some additional work that we've had to take on as a result of the new administration.
Thank you. And Holly, what are your thoughts on what we're looking at now with the new administration?
Yeah, I mean, I think, having worked in detention under both Obama, or even going back to Bush and Obama and Trump, I don't really see any differences in who I see in detention and how people are coming into detention, with rare exceptions of some non-priority cases we see coming in. I think the biggest change for me since the Trump administration is more engagement from non-traditional allies. The affected community's always been engaged in this issue, has always been protesting and raising their signs, but I think now more people in the United States are paying attention and engaging in solidarity with affected community members. And so what we're seeing is, both at the city level, the county level, the state level, there's city council members calling me for how to draft sanctuary provisions, as well as giving out money. There's a tremendous amount of money being doled out at the state, county, and city levels in California and other states across the United States. So the job market is pretty available if you're looking to work in this area of law. There are more jobs than there are qualified candidates right now. So that's what's changed in my mind, is a lot of the solidarity.
Interesting, thank you. We've had a few questions come in about language requirements. A number of people are wondering if not having a second language is prohibitive to getting into this field, or what you would recommend if they don't have a second language. Holly, what are your thoughts on that issue?
Well, I speak 3 languages, and it's indispensable. I tell every one of my students, if you want to become an immigration lawyer, learn Spanish, period. There are jobs out there where you don't need Spanish, but you will severely limit the universe of what you can apply for, and you will very often be doing the training or policy. There are some jobs where they will hire. I think there's so few qualified applicants right now. People are willing to pay for translators for lawyers, but you really can't develop that meaningful relationship with your client if you're always going through a translator. And of course, obviously, there are immigrants who speak other languages other than Spanish. Like, there's a huge need for Creole speakers, French speakers. It really depends on the geographic location you're in. If you're in Miami or New York, you may have other languages. And there may be Cantonese or Mandarin that's required. But for the most part, if you can, learn Spanish.
That's what to do. I think Holly's reception may have dropped out. Nico, are you able to hear me?
I am.
Okay. Nico, what are your thoughts on the language issue?
I absolutely agree that it is not 100% prohibition, but that it does limit the types of advocacy that you can do, and sometimes the quality of advocacy. That being said, there are positions out there in which you don't necessarily have to have it, but I think that to the extent that you can take the time to become proficient in especially Spanish, it is a real advantage.
Thank you. We've had some questions come in about people who really want to get into immigration but are not a young lawyer. Maybe they've practiced for a while, or maybe there's someone who's always been interested in this, but for a while they weren't able to take a pay cut. Holly, starting with you, what recommendations do you have for someone who's looking to get into immigration law further down the road in their career?
You can hear me, correct?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so I think the recommendation would be, I would probably start with something relatively, simple to sort of get your foot in the door, like doing like a U visa or something that's got a little bit more, can ease your way into it. And I would sort of increase the level of complexity. There's also, if you're an appellate lawyer, there's opportunities. The Ninth Circuit has an appellate pro bono program where they'll provide you with a one-on-one mentor, and they can, sort of walk you through, an appellate law brief, because 85% of detainees are not represented. So the need for pro bono representation is tremendous. But I would definitely align yourself with a nonprofit and make a meaningful commitment to that nonprofit to, work with them. Because I think what we see is a lot of people wanting to do volunteer work, and then they just don't follow through with their commitment. So, so definitely, if you're going to do this, know that it's going to be hard. It's going to require a lot of work. It's a very complex area of law. But make a commitment to that nonprofit, and you will reap the rewards, I think.
Thank you. And Nico, do you agree with Holly, or have any other suggestions for someone looking to get into immigration law further down in their career?
I think the only thing would be to reiterate a point that that was made earlier, that immigration law is really complex, and I think that one of the things, and one of the reasons why it might be necessary to really have a good partnership with a nonprofit organization and be involved that way, is because there is the risk of missing potential relief or mishandling how an immigration matter should be proceeding without kind of a deep knowledge of that complexity, or someone to help guide you through it. I think that people sometimes don't understand the complexities of the immigration system and especially the differences from, other adjudicative bodies.
Thank you. And one final question for both of you. I'll start with you, Nico. For people who are outside, done with law school, are there any, classes or courses or even ABA training for people to learn some of the basics about immigration law?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that there's a number of good CLEs out there. I think that there's often, I know our organization will put them on from time to time, addressing perhaps new topics in immigration law. I know we did a lot when DACA was initially rolled out. We did a lot of trainings, both for community members and practitioners, and there are other organizations out there, ILRC, the ABA, that also put on great trainings, and some of these trainings will be in coordination with even local nonprofits' effort to get pro bono lawyers to do things like, as Holly mentioned, provide assistance with U visa applications. And so I think that there are those kind of opportunities to learn the basics and get your foot in the door. I think.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And Holly, do you have any other training or course suggestions for anyone looking to get caught up to speed on some of the basics?
Yeah, the first thing I would do if I were advising somebody to is do an inventory of what you want to do, because immigration law is so dynamic. Do you want to work with children? Do you want to work with victims of crimes? Do you want to do appellate work? Do you want to do sanctuary work? Do you want to do legislative advocacy? Do you want to do federal litigation like habeas style work? Do you want to just do traditional immigration, deportation, defense? And if you do you want to work with detainees or you want to work with people who are free? Once you've identified what it is that is your passion and your focus, then focus in on that. Because if you try to do I think the thing I see oftentimes is the pro bonos come in and they're just sort of like wildly like going to all of these different subject matters, but it's way better to pick a micro focus on what area is your passion, and then stay with that and become an expert in that sliver of law if you're going to do this part-time. But that's definitely what I would recommend. And if you're going to do the appellate work or whatever you're going to do, then there's MCLEs or webinars that are directly related to that focus, and then you'll yourself be able to master that area. And I think that that's the most effective use of someone's time.
Great. Well, that is very helpful. Thank you both so much for your time. We are so glad that we had you here. This has been really informative, a fantastic program. So thanks to both of you, and thanks everyone for attending. And Emily, I'll turn it back to you.
Yes, thank you, Liz, for moderating, and Holly and Nico, thanks so much for your inspiring and heartfelt discussion on what it's like working in immigration law. And thank you all for attending today's webinar. Attendees, please be sure to check out our website at abalcc.org for upcoming free career-related articles and webinars. There are recordings posted on the website now, and on your screen are some of our upcoming webinars in the Career Choice series, and then these are some for the Career Advice series. We have one next week on the stress performance link strategies to increase resilience and avoid burnout. Also, we have a Twitter chat coming up on the 17th where you can join us at 2 p.m. Eastern and follow the hashtag Legal Career Chat to get some questions answered about resumes and job searching strategies and networking and whatnot. And also, please be sure to check out our job board. You can connect with us on social media, and you can also learn more about our board members on our website. So please complete our short survey before you leave, and thank you again, and have a great day.